Well, hey kids, hey parents. Hope that you're having a good week. And I know many of you made it out to Vacation Bible School. It was a good time together, and as we sought the Lord of the universe to see His goodness and His power. And so hopefully that's been something for you to talk about at home. That's the point of a lot of the stuff that we do at church and even these videos is to give you something to talk about together, not just to watch and go on, but to try to take the truth and put it to work in your life. Well, this week, as we keep moving through the Bible, we come to one of the most famous stories there is. And it's when God defeated a giant, an enemy of Israel, through King David. See, God had chosen him as king. And then the next thing that we hear about is David standing up for God's reputation. See, sometimes it's like, oh, David was brave and you can be brave too. Well, David did show bravery, but he showed confidence in God. See, Goliath was out there intimidating the people of God and their armies. They were scared of him, and he was making fun of their God. David wasn't out there in the battle. He wasn't with the army. He came to visit and check on his brothers, and he heard this guy making fun of the Lord, and he said, this shouldn't be. And so knowing that God had chosen him as the king and that he was going to deliver his people through them, David stepped up and said, I'll fight this guy. Well, people thought he was crazy. Even Goliath made fun of him, laughed at him, and said, you can't beat me. You got those little 5 stones there and a slingshot and a stick. Am I a dog? But then David took one of those rocks and slung it, hit Goliath in the head, and then boom. And God showed that day that it was His power. It wasn't because David was so great. And sometimes we're told that, oh, you're so awesome inside. It wasn't that. It was that God was so big. God cared for His people. God was keeping His promises. And a long time later, someone else special was going to come from David's family. I'll tell you about him in just a minute. But David didn't seem like a whole lot. He was still young. He wasn't with the army. But in my hand, I don't know if you noticed, I wasn't doing a lot with this hand. I've got a little bit of this powder in my hand. I could put it in my pocket. Nobody would notice. It's not impressive. And I've got just a little bit of this liquid here. Let's see what happens when I mix them. Oh. Kind of tingles. It's kind of cold. See, it didn't look like much, but it had a big reaction. David wasn't much. He wasn't impressive, but he relied on the Lord who was big and who is big and impressive. And about 1,000 years later, God sent someone from David's family. He had promised to do this. He had promised all the way back to Abraham and to Adam. He was going to send someone to fix the world and to return it to rest. He was going to send a king from David's family. And he was Jesus. He didn't look like much. He was born in a manger. He had poor parents. He was homeless as an adult. He wasn't good looking or anything like that the world will look and say, oh yeah, he's one we need to listen to. But he was God as a human. He had skin and bones and fingerprints, and his voice sounded a certain way. And he, even though he didn't look impressive, he really was. See, he came to fulfill God's promises. He was stronger than evil and stronger than sickness and death. He died in our place and then rose again to show he was God's king, and he was here to make the world new. And he calls us to trust him, and then he will help us to live the kind of life that he wants us to live. So that's something for you guys to talk about this week, to talk about the things that you may face that may seem scary or bad, and you think, I can't do this. And you're right, you can't. That's one of the best things you can acknowledge is you by yourself, you don't have the strength. But God promises to be with you if you trust him. And with the problems that you face, but also forever. So talk about those things together and encourage each other with those truths. And I hope to see you soon. Have a good week.